Welcome everyone to Daisy Education, formerly Reading Solution UK's fourth annual International Reading Conference. My name is Basit Siddiqui and I'm honoured to once again be hosting this conference. As a passionate educator and lifelong learner, I know that I and everyone attending will get so much from this session and the conference as a whole. We're almost halfway through the whole conference and we've had some lovely feedback. For those of you who haven't heard of Daisy Education, they are an edtech company that provide opportunities for students to discover and develop a love of learning through their personalized online program, Dreambox Reading Plus and Dreambox Maths. But they also love to support teaching and learning even further by hosting free, accessible CPD events to educators worldwide. This conference is a perfect example of that. Now, super excited that we're being joined by Martin Bailey. Martin is a digital enrichment lead, director of Animate to Educate, and lecturer at Sunderland University. His session is titled Tech Tools for Inclusive Reading. So please feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A tab throughout, and we'll aim to answer as many of them as we can do by the end of the session. The Daisy Education team will also be monitoring the chat box and will share Martin's contact details should you have any follow-up questions. Now, I've seen Martin at a couple of different sessions, never seen his full presentation, so I know that you're in for a treat. Martin, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much, Basil. Yes, and thank you to everybody who's joined online. So yes, this session is entitled Tech Tools for Inclusive Reading. And just following on a little bit there, sort of from the introduction, I had to explain a little bit about my background and the angle I'm speaking to you from. So as Basil said, my name is Martin Bailey. I am a primary school teacher, have been for 25 years now at various different schools. And my teaching career has more or less had two paths. So for the first 12, 13 years, I ended up where I was an assistant head teacher of a school in Gateshead. But using technology has always been my passion in education. So back in 2012, I started my own company, Animate, Educate, which to begin with was going into schools and doing workshops in animation, green screen, movie making. And so since that point, I've been teaching part-time and running Animate Educate for the last 12 to 13 years. So I'm now employed in a part-time role as digital enrichment leader at Ellington Primary School and at Birchwood Primary School, where I get the chance to teach computing from early years right through to year 6, but also leading on our digital strategy. And that's going to, play a lot into the session today. And yes, I've been in the university sector for the last 6 years as well. So I was at Durham University for 4 years. I'm now at Sunderland University, where I deliver the computing element of the course for the BE and the PGC students. So social feeds are on there if you want to give me a follow. I'm on various platforms, probably LinkedIn being the main one that I use now, so QR codes on there. So I mentioned one of the schools that I now work at is a school called Birchwood Primary School, where I have this role of digital enrichment lead. And obviously that sort of harnessing a love for reading and making sure that everyone can be a reader sort of plays quite a big part in this role of digital enrichment lead. And actually we had some visitors, we'll call them, at Birchwood just a few weeks ago, who had some lovely things to say about the school, but particularly about sort of how we harness a love of reading there. And I think those final few words there sort of sum up that culture that we want, sort of the school that everyone is a reader at Birchwood. And whilst I'm not for 1 second sort of advocating a purely sort of tech approach to reading, same we had some visitors to the school sort of recently, and the key there is that everyone is a reader at Birchwood. And I'm going to sort of show over the next 45 minutes or so some of the different tech tools that we use at Birchwood and other schools that I visit and work at as well, and how they can help that culture of everyone being a reader. So when we're teaching children to read, well, who is it that we're teaching to read? Well, I think what we've got to remember is that every single classroom, isn't it? It's unique. It's diverse. We've got SEND kids, we've got AL kids, we've got, a wide range of neurodiverse kids. And certainly there's not a one size fits all approach to reading. But in education now, we're limited by time, we're limited by human resources, we're limited by financial resources. And a lot of, tech tools are already there at our disposal. I know we would possibly want more technology in schools at times, but most schools now do have a reasonable number of tablets, of Chromebooks, of laptops, whatever it might be. So the tech is already there. It's just unlocking the potential of some of that technology. And hopefully, again, in this session, I'm going to sort of point you in the direction of some of the things you can go out and explore and sort of try out and see if they can make a difference in your setting too. So when I'm talking about inclusive reading, what is it that I mean by that? Well, it's about designing our reading experiences so that all children, regardless of their starting point, their specific need, whatever it might be, they can participate meaningfully. And we're not just talking about decoding words. We're getting to that point where children can comprehend, they can enjoy reading, and ultimately, what we want them to be inspired by what they're reading. We want them to think that absolutely anything is possible, sort of in their world. And we know that reading is the gateway to so much of education. So if there's one thing that we've got to make inclusive in education, it surely has to be reading. So for me, inclusive reading, it's made up of a number of different things. Well, first of all, we've got to make the text accessible. We've got to make sure that whatever a child's needs are, that the text can be accessible to them. We do need various different modes. Some children are going to be very stimulated by visuals. Some children are going to need things in much more of an audio format. We need to make sure that the environment of using adaptive tools is supportive. We see this personalized learning approach. So why does it matter? Well, we know that there are a range of different challenges and difficulties for our children. Some children who, for example, might be dyslexia, they're going to have challenges with word decoding, with fluency. Other children, maybe because they're AEL, are going to struggle with vocabulary or comprehension. Other children, simply that ability to focus attention, and the certain format of the text might be a struggle for them. So, again, inclusive reading, we want to make sure that all children, regardless of ability or background, can access and engage with the literacy. And what we have to remember is that reading, surely, it's a right. It's not a privilege, but without these inclusive practices, too many children are just excluded from meaningful engagement with text. So we want to make sure that no child is left behind, that children are empowered, and that tech can help to reduce those barriers. So the different assistive technologies that we're going to have a look at, they do the level the playing field. And when we're talking about inclusion, it's not just a support strategy, it's that commitment to equity, to engagement, and excellence for every one of our readers. And when reading is truly inclusive, well, the potential's unlocked, the voices are heard. And I think the powerful bit, isn't it? We talk about the impact of what we're doing, that futures are changed, because again, reading is that gateway, not just to education, but is that gateway to life. It's to the knowledge, it's to the opportunities that sort of are there for us throughout the rest of our life. And our classrooms are so diverse. They're so diverse in terms of the pupils that we have, but they're so diverse now in terms of what pupils want to find out. The world is such an amazing place, and we've got to make sure that through the books that children are put in front of them, but also through the material that is out there, whether that be online or whatever, that that everyone can gain this better understanding. And we want every child to have a sense of belonging. But if children can't properly access the books, if they can't properly access text that's put in front of them, then the education world, the classroom, will probably feel like quite a lonely place for them at times. So why the tech part? Why sort of when I'm talking about inclusion I sort of often sort of default to tech. Why is it that I'm passionate about the role that tech can play? And the strapline my company is about bringing the curriculum to life, and again, nothing more powerful than books for doing that. And that inclusivity is huge in doing so. Well, I think we can probably split it down into sort of 5 areas of what tech can offer in terms of reading inclusion. Well, first of all, we've got accessibility. So if a child, for example, is struggling with the size of the font, well, yeah, now tech can very easily sort of change that. And we've always done that to an extent. We've had TAs or whatever who would blow something up on the photocopier to A3 size and that. But the time, the physical, the financial implications of that are huge. So it was quite limited. Now we can do those sort of things, quite instantly. And most of us will have a class of approximately sort of 30 pupils. So if we're simply just differentiating the text in a traditional way of like, oh, you've got that book, or, I've made a worksheet and differentiated it into 3 ways, whatever, it's almost impossible to tailor the text for every reader. But actually now, sort of through text, it can be a very personalized learning experience, and tech can engage certain kids. And again, I'm not for 1 second sort of disparaging traditional print, because it's an amazing thing. But for certain things, hearing the characters' voices, for example, might be that hook for a reluctant reader. Anonymous, we want to develop that independence, and tech can sort of be that little tool that sort of makes children an independent reader, because if they for themselves can find out the definition of a word, then it can suddenly unlock that paragraph, that page, that story, whatever it might be, and the children are taking control of their own unit. And we have that multi-sensory input that is different for different children. So said some are visual, some are auditory, and sometimes it might even be tactile. And again, that can be something that can be offered by tech. So if we're offloading some of that mechanical burden of reading, then we're reducing the cognitive workload, and then children then can put their mental energy onto the comprehension and the meaning of a text. So what we've got to remember, though, is that the teacher is still the most powerful part in that process. And so it's not about replacing you. It's not about replacing the physical books. It's that the technology is this powerful equalizer. It's going to level the playing field. And ultimately, what we want to empower children to access text independently, because it's going to build the confidence. It's going to take them from that point of saying, like, I can't read this, to what we want to be is like, I can read this with a little help from technology. And that's not cheating. It's not sort of, doing anything that we don't do as adults every day. Every single one of us will, Google an answer, use AI, whatever it might be on a day-to-day basis, because we don't always have the answers. We don't always have the, the access at our fingertips. So we use technology all the time to level the playing fields. But why do we not always do that sort of, readily in education, certainly when it comes to reading? So we've got to see technology as this bridge that gives children the opportunity to get into reading. So it can foster that independence and efficacy, can book engagement and motivation, it can build confidence in struggling readers, and it can offer personalized pathways into different texts for children. And I love this quote. It's not one of my own, but one that I sort of love using. And thank you for that nice quote that somebody said about the censure last year. This is actually the title of my presentation last year, of what's necessary for some is good for all. And often when we talk about sort of things like tech tools to support reading, we often do default to send pupils. And yeah, of course, those type of pupils, they do need support. But the best form of inclusion is surely something that is used by everyone. Yes, it can be adapted and everybody use it in their own way. But if we think about those certain pupils, how demoralizing must it be at times when it's like, oh, right, that's what you're doing, that's what you're doing. And then, this 1 or 2 children have like, something completely separate for themselves. But if it's a tool that everyone's using, from what children perceive to be the highest ability child in the class to your certain pupils, but everyone use it, everyone access it, well, yeah, that does become powerful. That does become sort of meaningful then, because regardless of, the ability of a child, there is always going to be a word that they might be stumbling on. We all sort of have materials that we want adapted in ways that are sort of personal, sort of to ourselves. So what's necessary is some is good for. We don't want to be seeing these tools as just for one or two sort of children. They'll never have the true impact. And it's got to be something that's, properly embraced into your, teaching sort of there. And it is, it's going to enhance your quality first teaching, and it's making it accessible. It's making it engaging, not just for your SEND pupils, but for everyone in the class, and not just supporting, those, lower ability children, but actually they need the extra challenge as well. Who need stretched in different ways. So when we're talking about customizable reading experiences, well, what are the different type of things that we can do? Well, there's a whole range of different tools that are available. And obviously, we're all going to have a multitude of different devices. So, some of you might be on Apple devices, some of you might be Chromebooks, Microsoft, whatever. So I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of how you do it on different platforms. Otherwise, would need the rest of the day. But just to be known that these things are there, that at the touch of a button. So, go away and whatever your devices are, find out how to do it, because it's quick, it's instant. We can change the size of text instantly. We can change the color, the background, the fonts, and all of these things make things sort of far more sort of personalized for us. So, I tend to be sort of quite Apple, sort of quite iPad, and sort of use a iPhone sort of myself sort of there. So, there's something called Reader View that we have sort of on Apple devices, and it just a touch of the button, fonts can be made, so much bigger. We can make things, like I say, whatever, some of us like white writing on black background, some of us like black writing on white background, sepia, whatever it might be, and so on. And, it's interesting that these are sort of skills for life. My father's 87, coming up 88, and has been a avid reader his whole life. But, obviously now as he gets a little bit older, accessing a book in a traditional sense, for a number of reasons, has become a bit harder. From just the kinesthetics of holding the book and turning the pages has got a little bit trickier from it. And obviously, sort of visually, his eyesight's not as good. But in recent years, I've trained him how to use type, and actually bizarrely screen time's often sort of more than mine a day now. But even at 87, 88, he knows now how to like sort of just touch the button and enlarge the books he reads. He has his daily newspaper online and stuff like that. So these are tools for life. These are tools that sort of we should be teaching to children at 6, 7, 8 years of age, but maybe using them at 86, 87, 88 years of age as well. And for myself, you can see I've got my glasses on my head now, and like a lot of people, I tend to find that I'm out and about, and particularly as a man, I haven't got a bag or pockets or whatever with us. So yes, I constantly sort of live with my glasses on my head, sort of in a professional sense. But now if I'm out and about and I'm at a restaurant or wherever it might be, and I struggle to read the menu. So my magnifier app is probably like the app that I use sort of more than anything sort of on my phone. And again, it's there. It's there in the technology that we have in our classroom. Lots of us will have tablet technology, or if we want to be a little bit braver, that technology is probably locked in the top drawer of the teacher's desk, because kids will bring their phones into school and then they'll be told, oh right, put them in the teacher's drawer, put them in the filing cabinet, whatever it might be. But at times we make sensible adjustments in other areas of the curriculum. So if a child, for example, is diabetic, other children will see that that child maybe has to have a snack during lesson times. And to begin with, there might be that little bit of resistance of other children, why are they allowed a sort of, some sort of food sort of during lessons and I can't. But they quickly realise that, well, that's necessary for that child. So, if a certain child does need something enlarged, then, there's not the TA, there's not the other ways of doing it. Well, is it not sensible that we look and go, well, actually, that child's got their phone, it's in the drawer. If they may be using the magnifier at home, why are we denying them the opportunity to sort of do something like that at school? So, every child is going to be different. Yes, some will need it, some with visual impairments or whatever are going to need things blown up. But if we're just more comfortable with, a larger font or font on a different colored background, whatever it might be, well, allow people to do this. These are just, you know, skills that now we've started like teaching sort of to all our children, so that, you know, they can all just personalize the learning experience. Sort of too, there's no right or wrong. You don't have to be diagnosed as dyslexic or colorblind or whatever it might be. It's just about making sort of the content sort of comfortable for you. So do go away, explore the devices that you have sort of in school, and just have a little bit look at, you know, how would you sort of change the size of text? How do you change the color background? How can you change different fonts to make it sort of appropriate? And also, probably whatever that you're using, you will have the ability to have something read aloud. And when we hear words, we unlock the meaning, don't we? You know, sort of, you know, often sort of, you know, we might see a word on a page and it's like, oh, but then just simply hearing the word out loud, right, that's actually what it says, or it might be the intonation of the word, whatever it might be. So audio narration, it's that alternative way for users to consume content. And again, we're hearing that more and more in everyday lives. I know lots of people who, you know, like listening to audiobooks and podcasts and things like that now, but I see less of it in education. And why is it in education we don't embrace things as quickly as we do in other parts of our life? But again, if we look at the sort of the big three there now, you know, if you're using Google Chrome, they have read aloud, so does Microsoft Edge, and then Apple has you know, speak screen selection. So again, you know, just Google, YouTube, whatever it might be, how to do these on whatever device you want. So there's a, you know, just a little example there, sort of taken from sort of Google Chrome, that absolutely anything can be read aloud. So, you know, again, that could be because it's an EAL child, it could be a child who's dyslexic, it could be, you know, a child who's just, you know, reading ability, or, you know, ADHD, the ability to concentrate on simply reading the text is not there. But we all engage in different ways. Like I say, some of us have probably absolutely loved audiobooks in recent years, or that people just can't get away with them at all. But we're all different, and it's the same as those 30 children in your class or whatever. They're all different. So if these tools are there, why are we forcing children sort of like a one size fits all approach? Surely we've got to be sort of making the most of all of these different tools that are at our disposal. So in terms of text and audio, it's supporting decoding and phonics, it's aiding fluency and pronunciation, it's enhancing comprehension, it's reducing that visual fatigue and anxiety, and it's allowing access to more complex text, because sometimes we might find something that might be a website, for example, and think, oh, you know, that's good, but it's just not quite at the level for my year fours, whatever it might be. Well, actually stretch them sometimes, but stretch them, but allow them to listen to the content. It, you know, it doesn't always have to be that, you know, somebody's got to sit and read through, you know, that page, that paragraph. It might be, you know, vary up the content that we give to children. Certainly, you know, having that oracy element to it, and having children, whether it be a whole page, a whole paragraph, or just simply a word that can be read aloud to aid meaning, is, you know, incredibly powerful. And, you know, there will be, you know, probably a number of children in almost any class, certainly in every school, who are dyslexic. And, you know, again, there are a number of features that are absolutely easy to implement, that make things, you know, far easier for children with dyslexia now. So, you know, color overlays, which in the past, you know, we had to by like sort of acetate sheets that we would have put over the top of books and text. Again, you know, in most tablets and other technical, that's, you know, easily available. Just, you know, have a look, sort of find out, how do we, you know, put these features on in accessibility. You don't need the TA, you don't need the bits of acetate now to be able to do that. You've got, in things like Windows, you have Nightlight, and on iOS there's Night Shift. We can also adjust like the line spacing as well, which helps. And obviously the you know, the obvious one from a dyslexia point of view tends to be that open dyslexic sort of font. And we'll look at sort of in a moment now, like with something like AI, we can just photograph a page and get that to take it into the open dyslexic sort of font. So, you know, it's that personalization. It's about just those little things. But in the past, you know, say I've been teaching 25 years, it would have been a big deal. It would have taken a lot of time, a lot of human resources to make things accessible in this way. Now it can be done at the touch of a button. And the important thing is, train children, maybe around about year 2, year 3, train them more independently how to do these things, so that actually it's just very embedded into classroom culture, sort of children doing these type of things themselves. Great tool that I've sort of loved using both personally and sort of introducing pupils to over the last year or two is one called Microsoft Immersive Reader. I'm sure lots of your schools probably do use Microsoft sort of products there. So Microsoft Immersive Reader is a completely free tool. So again, go away, explore. So what it's about, it's great for giving access to all children, but particularly again dyslexia, ADHD, autism, whatever it might be. And Immersive Reader tends to be sort of available in a wide range of Microsoft products. So whether you're using Word, PowerPoint, you may be using Edge to sort of browse content there. So it does text to speak. We talked about. You can customize the text display. So again, instead if you want larger fonts, spacing, color, whatever it might be, there's something called focus mode. So if you're on, for example, a website and there's lots of like advertising and pictures and toolbars and stuff like that, if you go into focus mode, it removes all that, so just leaves the text. We can like have line focus where it highlights certain bits of time. And then there's also things like translation and the picture dictionary, which I particularly sort of enjoy. So there's an example of using the picture dictionary with Microsoft Immersive Reader. So you can see there, if, for example, the child was struggling with the word weather, highlight that word, it will give you the sort of the picture there to help you, and also you can have the audio there to go alongside it. So if you are a school that use Microsoft products, which I'm sure a lot are, Immersive Reader is definitely something that you want to check out. But I think in education, our problem is that we don't know what we don't know, and so why would sort of somebody necessarily know about this unless somebody has shown them, and it tends to be the type of thing that maybe we haven't done staff meetings about. It's there, it's a tool, it's on the devices that we're sort of using, but nobody is shown us. So again, I could have done a session just purely on Microsoft Immersive Reader. It's about sort of letting us know today what's out there, and I'm sure different people have interests in different things, and you can go away, you can explore, you can look to see if this is something that's sort of right for your sessions. There's also a range of brilliant digital dictionaries and vocabulary builders out there. So yes, I mentioned about the picture dictionary in Immersive Reader, but lots of you will have tablet technology in your settings. If you have a look for the particular devices, there generally tend to be a lookup sort of function there. So again, find out how to do it yourself. It's got to sort of come top down. We as educators have got to learn how do we use these tools first of all, then teach the pupils so that they're using things like this independently. Collins now do free dictionary for schools. There's a primary and a secondary version, which you can sign up for completely free of charge. So again, have these maybe as like web link shortcuts on your tablets or on your toolbar, whatever it might be, but train the kids to use these things independently. Probably the days of like going to a paper dictionary in the corner of the classroom are probably a bit dated, because let's be honest, when did we as adults last pick up a dictionary to find out either a spelling or a meaning? Surely lots of us are probably, if I'm not sure about a spelling, I type it into Word or whatever it may be and see if there's a squirrely line comes up underneath. If I want a definition, I go online, ask Google or whatever. So giving people's digital sort of tools at their disposal to find out about sort of spellings and find out about meanings, incredibly powerful. And I do like to give pupils a choice. Again, don't be misled, sort of seeing this session and thinking like, oh, everything I do in school is digital. Far from it. But, having digital content available as a choice, as a stimulus, for certain pupils, and sometimes using physical, sometimes using digital, I think is the, is the perfect the perfect model, because people will be stimulated in different ways. So a resource we use is called Serial Mash. It's by Too Simple, who make Purple Mash, and it's something that some of our kids are more engaged digitally. Some, of course, prefer the physical content. But in this day and age in which we live now, I think it is important that in an educational setting there is at least some digital content that's available. And it does tend to be a lot more multi-sensory. You do tend to get much more in terms of the visuals, certainly the audio, and there can be things like progress tracking in there. So it's almost a bit like a Netflix sort of for books that's about there. So if you did want to try that out, I'm not on any commission, anything like that, but over the summer they have what's called the Serial Mash Summer. So it's completely free if you want to sort of get involved in that sort of over the summer to get your pupils potentially sort of reading in a digital way, but a completely free one that you might want to have a look at. Something called Story Weaver by Problem Books. And there are almost 10,000 different digital stories on there. So, access sort of web-based on any browser, any sort of device that's on there. And, tends to be a lot of sort of multicultural things on there. So, you'll find things for lots of different topics and occasions you do in school, or just for those who want to read in a quiet way, but want access via digital devices. Do check out Story Weaver. Speech recognition software is becoming a lot more advanced now. One time sort of something like that was very primitive, and its success was quite limited. But there's some really good speech recognition software out there. So a resource that we use is called Phonetti, which again, can be used on a range of different sort of devices. But the idea with sort of Phonetti largely is that if you think about whether it be at home or in school, the time that we have available to hear children read aloud tends to be quite limited. Probably if we're lucky in school, each individual child in a class of 30 pupils might read aloud for 2, 3, 5 minutes a week if we're very lucky, whether it be one-to-one or in a guided reading session. Except likewise at home, not every family has the time available to hear a child sort of read aloud. So, using the technology we have at our disposal now, something like Phonetti will listen to a child read aloud. And what's powerful is, even if they're in a noisy classroom, it will still pick up on their individual voice and will actually turn the words green that they've read correctly, and we get that sort of then teacher feedback through the dashboard and stuff like that. That's what they're doing. So, whilst again, I am not for 1 second, advocating that children are not reading aloud to adults in school or at home, it's an alternative. It's another tool in our pencil case. So again, Phonetti have like a summer reading challenge. It's great that a lot of these companies provide things free of charge over the summer. So have a look at the National Read Aloud Challenge. I think that runs on the 1st of July to the 31st of August, where a whole bank of software is available free of charge, and people can even win a trip down to London and stuff like that. So potentially check that out as a resource, and have a look at sort of what this speech recognition software can do. And within a lot of these type of tools, it does gamify the curriculum a little bit. There's a lot of research around at the moment about the power of sort of gamifying a lot of different things. You think about the impact that something like Times Table Rockstars has made sort of within children learning their tables. Then there's something to be said about potentially sort of gamifying the process of reading as well. And I think it's important that we point children in the direction of digital resources outside of school, and potentially think about some digital and audio things within the classroom as well. So I know sort of via my local library, I can access BorrowBox. So, my library experience has sort of changed sort of over the last 20 or 30 years. So, are we educating children? Are we letting them know? Are we letting families know that there's content available in this way if they are the children that preferred sort of digital media? If you look at a site called Bookshare, there's also RNIB Bookshare one as well, where you can get digital content free of charge. Audible, lots of us probably know about sort of, through our own Amazon subscriptions and stuff like that. There's Audible for schools. You can sign up for a 30-day trial of that, and some of that content is available free of charge all the time. BBC Sounds and CBB Stories do, some nice things that we can listen to. So yeah, of course, it's appropriate that we have story time, etc., in class as often as possible. But sometimes for the teacher, but for the pupils, listen to their voices as well. It doesn't always have to be the teacher, the TA, etc. Have a look at Lit to Go. It's got some really nice free audio content on there as well. And for me, one of the most exciting tools that's come about sort of in my 25 years in education is the use of AI. And when it comes to reading, to text, I think this is where AI really comes into its own, because whether you're using ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, whatever it might be, we can take text in whatever format we want and easily adapt it now. So whether it be web-based and we copy and paste, or you can photograph a page from a book, you can photograph a child's piece of writing, and with just a simple prompt, we can have that differentiated. We can have it made simpler. We can have it in a open dyslexic font. We can have it produced with different, colored backgrounds. This virtual assistant sort of for us that we've all cried out for extra TA time and the ability to do. These are instant. These are things that we should be able to do without even thinking about it now. But also, we can create content that the children want. So whatever it is that they're interested in, we can make stories. We can make them as the character. We can have them sort of doing this magnificent shared right experience. We can have them doing hot seating that goes beyond anything that we would ever do. Just simply using phrases like respond or reply as if you're Howard Henry or whoever it might be. And the world's an oyster in terms of what they can ask, sort of characters, historical people, whatever it might be, and so on. So, I think most of us are probably on that AI journey, but, just remember how powerful it is. And people always say to us, can it do this? Can it do that? So give it a go. There's probably not a week goes by at the minute when I don't try something new with regards to AI. And a lot of the time it is that personalization. It is like, can it convert this? Can it change that? Can it do whatever? And, more often than not, I'm incredibly surprised by, just what it can do and how powerful it is. And, children will learn in a variety of different ways. I remember being a child and getting taken to the library, and, I would go for the pop-up books. That was sort of, obviously sort of what ticked the boxes for me, being quite kinesthetic. So one of the things that it's almost like modern day pop-up books in many ways that I love, and things is augmented reality. So augmentation is about adding another layer onto reality, and there's some fantastic augmented reality content out there for education now, linked to a variety of different topics that we're doing. And again, for some children, it can just be that little hook. It can be that little bit stimulus for that child that says, I hate reading, but has a love of technology. Just suddenly, combining the two can be the hook. And again, I am not for 1 second saying that's for everybody, but we've got to personalize things. We've got to look at sort of what's available. How can we engage, all children, whatever their, the mode of learning is there. So just to bring things to an end for the last sort of 5 minutes or so, start small, but begin to scale up. So think about some of the things that I've shown you, sort of teased you to go away and explore sort of there. Maybe just begin with one or two of those tools, and we've got 5 or 6 weeks left of this sort of academic year, but we're certainly looking ahead to sort of September now. So it's not about a tech approach. It is very much a blended approach where we're combining tech with physical books. And for some schools, that tech may play a bigger side of things, depending on whether you're a school who's got one-to-one devices or whether you're a school who, has very limited tech. But every single school has some tech that can be utilized. And we've got to empower that student choice and independence. It shouldn't just be about, what's written in a school, in a plan to support SEND people. It should be something for everyone. Think about how the devices are managed, how pupils can get sort of involved in that, and how things, particularly when in more schools it's going to be shared devices, how it can be available. I tend to find, like, say, often it's like a morning time when we might be doing the reading type sessions in the schools, and yet often that'll be the times when devices will be sat in cabinets and will not be getting used. And of course we need to balance that screen time. For those children who would happily sort of be in front of a digital device all the time, of course we've got to encourage them to have traditional methods as well. And as we've said, teacher training and CPD is crucial to all this. If we take something like, Microsoft Immersive Reader there, well, the first step's got to be that staff know how to use it first before we can empower the children. And of course, there's, online safety implications with a lot of these things. And then, this idea of the digital divide, making sure that, it's fair in terms of, like, who can access it and that it's available for all. But that key thing there, celebrate successes. If you suddenly have that child who has a love of reading, can access content, then make a big deal of it in your Friday celebration, assembly, whatever it might be. So I hope today is, like I say, it's teased a little bit. It was never going to be a session training on particular resources, because it would have just been a session looking at one thing. But it's just, maybe as we get towards the end of that academic year, it's just got this little thinking about, how can we change? How can we adapt? How can we, we make better use of the technology we've got? How can we personalize things a little bit more? It's not about perfection, certainly not at this stage, but it's about progress. So my little challenge to leave you with is, can you choose one new tool, one thing that you've seen today, or one feature of a resource you've already had, and could you try it out, with your class or with the pupil before the end of term? Because just that one small step can open up a world of reading for a child who previously felt excluded. So it's not just about access, that's the boring bit. It's about joy. It's about independent. When we design for the margins, those who need it, then actually everyone benefits, and as that sort of statement from our visitor said at the start, every child deserves to be.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You've had lots of comments coming through and questions to Q&A. Thank you so much, Martin. Really, really useful stuff there. And I think the fact that you went kind of down really broad in terms of the possibilities that are out there. Yes, on first look, it does seem really overwhelming, but you've given a real nice insight in terms of what the potential is as well. And exactly as you said at the end, it's just dip your toe in, try, see what works for you, celebrate the successes. I think that's really, really powerful. I think for me, and I tend to pride myself on just trying to keep at the forefront of what's happening in kind of the ed tech space. But you are an absolute master when it comes to that real breadth. So thank you so much for that. Stuff that stood out for me was the immersive reader and what you can do with that. And I can't read my writing here, but the Read Aloud Challenge sounds brilliant as well. That so there's some really, really good stuff that's happening in that space, which is brilliant. So thank you. Now, we've got questions, and I'll invite other people to add some questions. There is another challenge that I do want to ask this audience as well, which was something that Martin said at the end, but I'll ask it at the end just so it doesn't take away from the questions coming through. So, Martin, in terms of questions, thank you very much for taking the time to do the questions. So, the first question that we had in was, do you have any prompts that we can use to make a text accessible to multiple learning levels? Now, you did touch on AI and that you are experimenting with it. Is there any advice in terms of prompts or anything with regards to that?
Yeah, so I've just changed the screen there, which should be on. It's got my email address on the
Brilliant.
screen. If somebody wants to drop an email, I've done quite a few, specific AI presentations at events sort of recently, and I've got a document I've created called 50 Best AI Prompts for Teachers. I'm happy to email that sort of document to anyone, in that it just helps you with those, getting started with those prompts that might help to personalize things and so on. So happy to email that document across to anybody who drops us an email.
Fantastic. And I would definitely encourage you to get in touch with Martin because I know that he's a wealth of information. So next question, do you know of any communities online that share tech tips and recommendations they've stumbled upon? I think a lot of this about the nuance of the platform itself. For example, they've put in brackets, love the magnifier example, something that you just come across and thought that's really useful for this.
Definitely on a personal level, I tend to not necessarily be part of groups per se, sort on there. But yeah, definitely over the last 10, 12 years or so, certainly the online space. I learn off other people all the time. Again, there's probably barely a week goes by when I don't sort of, see, used to often be quite traditionally sort of Twitter. That sort of maybe changed a little bit. I'm certainly finding there's a lot of educators on TikTok now, so do check out sort of TikTok. That's on there. So not so much like I say a group, but definitely educators out there. So if you're not on social media, it doesn't mean that you've got to be posting or whatever, but do use social media. Probably 70-80% of the things that I've found out about, I find out sort of now in that sort of digital space, whether it be Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever it might be, and so on. So yeah, use the digital space that's out there. Maybe have a look at some of the people I follow on Instagram, TikTok, etc. It'll give you some ideas of the type of people to follow.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, completely agree with that. I'm not a TikToker or follow on TikTok, so I should do it to find you. I tend to live on LinkedIn now, but you're right about X. It's become a bit mad there, hasn't it? So moving on with the questions, do you have any reading dynamics? I mean, reading approaches, tips for a reading session to read as a group. So group reading, any suggestions and tips with regards to that?
Um, Again, I'd probably like, if I think about my sort of specific role, obviously I'm not the literacy lead, the reading lead sort of within the school. My sort of role within that sort of digital enrichment side of things is more looking at the how the tech makes things accessible, rather than being the one who sort of uh, curates the sessions themselves. But I would certainly, following on from what we said in this session, is that little tools that's at your disposal. So somebody mentioned about the magnifier there, for example. If just a child having that while they're doing, say, a guided reading session with 6 kids, if that makes it more accessible, if that makes them, um, able to engage sort of in the text a bit more, then why do we not have that sort of slightly hybrid approach? It tends to be one or the other that I see in schools, and that actually, marrying the two things together might be sort of more of the sort of perfect solution. So I know that's probably not the greatest of answers, but maybe just again gives you a little food for thought as to say how we're going to plan our guided reading sessions or whatever it might be sort of from September.
Absolutely. No, fantastic. And no, appreciate just your thoughts on that. And then last but not least in the question area, regarding the augmented tools for reading, what do you suggest?
Well, I think probably with the augmented side of things, it's that stimulus, it's that hook. If you look online again, that there is a range of great, so particularly those topics, you think of something like space or dinosaurs or whatever it might be, um, that's out there. So my own personal bank of books are there. So it's not necessarily about one particular author or one particular publisher or whatever, but it's looking uh, at what's out there, and sometimes just having a selection of those type of books sort of within your school library, within the class collection, whatever it might be, sort of there. So again, there is some three things that might be a stimulus that you could use within a classroom situation with regards to augmented reality. If we're talking about books, well, obviously there is going to be a cost of buying the book. The app tends to be free, but you obviously need the book to be like the trigger for the augmented reality sort of resource there. But there's a wealth of augmented things out there now, and the cost is often very similar to a non-augmented book and stuff like that. That's out there. But yeah, just have a bit think about the topics that you're doing. Like I say, a couple of that sort of spring to mind is things like space and dinosaurs and these type of topics that we might do, whether it be
Brilliant.
two there. And there's things where suddenly you've got a T-Rex walking across your desk. You can be holding the planets in your hand, whatever it might be, seeing the solar system on your desk and that. And for some quite kinesthetic topics, it can be that little bit. It can be that little bit cheesy, but yeah, it can bring the curriculum to life. So just Google augmented reality space, augmented reality Egyptians, whatever it might be, and you'll find whether it be on Amazon or whatever. There's a wide range of augmented reality books available now.
And it just brings that learning to life, doesn't it, in that different way? So that's fantastic. You look a lot less tired than someone who keeps up to date with everything that's happening in the edtech space. How do you do it? What is it? It's a curiosity and a love for it, but any tips for someone who's wanting to try and keep up to date with it as well?
I think be disciplined. I will be, and I think what's important is to take a break. And in that way, that reading can be a pleasure, can also be some there. So I will be in 5 weeks time. I will sign off on a 6 week digital detox, and I will take a
Nice.
6 week break from all social media, etc., and literally delete the apps and reinstall them again in September. So yeah, give yourself disciplined time both throughout the year, but also say like in an evening, making sure that I have that non-screen time sort of before I go to bed, and I still enjoy picking up a traditional book then at that time of day and that. So yeah, the digital world's brilliant, but give yourself a little bit of a break from it as well too.
And I think someone who's such an advocate for the digital space saying that is really, really important. So thank you very much for wrapping up with regards to that. That's brilliant. And we've got the immersive readers super duper popular, picture dictionary, speech recognition software. Yep, some lovely stuff coming through there. So if you enjoy your digital detox when it arrives, Martin, but sincerely, thank you very much for today. It's been really, really eye-opening and really useful. So thank you so much.
No, it's been a pleasure to be invited, and I hope everybody found things useful and enjoyed the rest of the content over the conference as well. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Now, just to say my official goodbyes and everything, of course, massive thank you to Martin, and a thank you from all of us at Daisy Education. Do reach out, spread the word, any little lessons that you've learned, tagging Martin in, but also at Read Solutions UK on X. Find us on Daisy Education and other social channels, and use the hashtag IRC25. From all of us at Daisy Education, thank you so much and take care. Thanks,
Take care.
everyone.